Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Crypto Tips. My name is Heidi.
My name is Toby.
And today's video is inspired by one question by a amazing CT Club member. And so here we go. They say Michael Saylor was asked to pick one. A, Bitcoin is digital property. B, Bitcoin is digital energy. Or C, Bitcoin is digital gold. What do you think he means by digital energy? But first, Toby, if you had to pick those three, which one do you think best describes Bitcoin?
Property. Bitcoin.
Digital property.
Digital property. It is the purest form of property the world has ever seen. You can actually hold your property in your head, going through borders, and transfer that to your family for ages and ages and ages without anybody actually knowing otherwise other than you guys. So governments can't steal it without, really torturing you and trying to figure out what your private keys are. If you give it to them, you probably shouldn't. And, they can't shoot you because then they'd lose your private key. So it's such a fantastic one. And plus, I can transfer digital property to anyone in the world, no matter how poor they are, even if they don't have a bank account. Try that with anything else, guys. You can't.
Yeah. Especially, when you're talking about NFTs and putting property rights, like literal real world property, a house you can live on, you can solidify that ownership on the blockchain.
Sure.
But also, what you're talking about is digital gold. A lot of people want to make that similarity between Bitcoin and digital gold, but digital property is just one step even further than that, because gold is certainly limited in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So what do you think Michael Saylor means by digital energy?
Well, it is a really pure form of energy. For instance, in order to have a healthy economy, you have to have economic energy. For instance, if your government, like the U.S. government, printed 40% of all currency that has ever existed over the past 12 months, that is sucking away that economic energy. The U.S. is essentially an economic diabetic. As Saylor would probably say. And so that's what's happening right now. Imagine having to go do a marathon and, say, for instance, you have 10 pints of blood in your body and every month they took 1 pint away from you. That's essentially what's happening with your currency. That's what's happening with inflation. So go ahead and try to run a marathon. Well, you can't. So how are you supposed to run a country, being an economic diabetic? You can't. So that's what's happening. That's why, the U.S. is on a runaway train, essentially. There's no turning back. It's finished, essentially. You can't rein back the inflation that's about to happen. You've never seen inflation like you're going to see. And that is why it's so important to have the purest form of economic energy, which is Bitcoin. Because you can store it. It's easy to transfer. It's global.
You already said, yeah.
Everything, yeah.
So also I was thinking too of, for those of you who've been subscribed since the summer, you might have caught the interview that a friend of ours, Kent Halliburton, had with Robert Breedlove, and how he was referencing digital energy, but a different way. But I really like how you were saying the economic energy, because I think that's a lot more relevant. But like digital energy as in, just purely the amount of energy required to generate a Bitcoin. That's kind of the value that's represented in Bitcoin. And he was kind of calling it like a battery, kind of. So,
yeah, I mean, Bitcoin takes about $2 billion a year, or actually $4 billion a year, but at most. That is securing the network, that is doing all the transfers and stuff. And I mean, imagine like gold. Gold is like 100 billion or something like that to do that, and you're raping the crap out of the earth, and with this you can at least do green stuff.
Exactly.
So for instance,
sustainable energy.
China, when they banned it and they had to decentralize themselves, it turned all green.
Yeah. It was actually great. Yeah, turn it away from the coal that they use there.
Exactly.
So here's another analogy that maybe you can put in with the battery thing. What we were talking about a little bit before we started recording was let's say Bitcoin is a battery, and comparing that battery to fiat currency being a battery. Bitcoin having a known emission rate, a decreasing emission rate, versus fiat, which, like you were saying, is just being printed and printed and printed into oblivion. Nothing is holding that back. When you're concerning where you're going to be storing your wealth and which battery would you choose a battery that's like depreciating so fast that it doesn't actually work with it doesn't actually power much things,
Well, fiat is essentially the battery with the bottom off of it. So essentially it's just spewing its guts out completely.
That's battery.
Well, that's what fiat is. And slowly and all of a sudden
battery
it happens.
acid.
Yeah, exactly. So, for instance, okay, so it's got a large hole in it, when it begins, when the fiat currency begins. And then as the economic energy leaves, it expands that hole more and more and more. And now, as you see, steel's up 165%, lumber's up 125%.
While the value of your currency is just...
So it's just spewing its guts out. And that's where you die. That's essentially where
your value dies.
Where your economic energy is sucking the life out of you. You know what I mean? It's just... It's going away, and so that is fiat, and that is essentially you're going to, when you suck the air out of the room, you suffocate or freeze. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen to people economically. They are going to suffocate or freeze, and that sucks because just look at around the world. Look at all these hyperinflating currencies. This is what is going to happen to the U.S. dollar and all other stinking currencies out there. They all suck. That's why we need to get everybody on the Bitcoin standard immediately. I
know. Whenever you think of, a lot of people are concerned of, but what if we want to go back to fiat? You have that analogy of like a leaking battery acid all over, like wanting to get back to that. You'd probably want to limit yourself to that exposure as much as possible.
It's horrible. So, that's pretty much it.
So that's our unfortunate future that we see for the U.S. or really, any central bank
that's most countries
out of control, and is not using or allowing Bitcoin to be a form of legal tender. So,
I mean, considering that the average lifespan for a fiat currency is about 45 to 50 years old. And there's a reason for that. For instance, the U.S. dollar is only about 47, 49 years old right now, since 1971. So that is, it's at its end stage, essentially. There's no reining back the inflation. As you know, Fed is keeping the interest rates pretty much flat. They're not touching it. 0.25 basis points isn't anything. And so they know this, and they're going to keep it that way. So.
Yeah. Also, on the contrary, I do just want to put a quick little tidbit in here. El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as its legal tender last year. And since then, for the first time in the country's history, the GDP has grown by 10.3%.
That's awesome.
So there we go. We'll see what keeps happening there. But anyway.
Guys, please like and subscribe and check us out on our CT Club. The link is down below. And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.